Okay, this is great. Like, this is a lot of really helpful information to work with. So now we have the 2 dimensions to look at things. Oh, I missed you guys last week. Unfortunately, I got COVID for the 2nd time, and it was not fun. And to be honest, it's still lingering a little bit. You can maybe tell with my voice, and in this video you might hear a or a but we're here, and I'm glad to be. As many of you know, I'm able to save something like 50 to 80% of my income depending on the month, and that's because of the systems I use and the way that I've structured my life. So I wanted to try something fun. Given the current economic climate and inflation and all this crazy stuff going on right now, I thought it would be nice to look at some ways to actually save some money. And to do that, I thought it would be cool to have somebody send me all the details of their spending for an entire month and see if we can come up with a way to double their savings rate. So a certain someone who has recently told me that she'd like to try and save more money has graciously offered up 1 month's worth of spending for us to dive into. So here's what we're working with. We have take-home pay of about $4,200 in this particular month and a savings rate of about 10% of that. So we're going to see together if we can get that rate up to 20%. Now, she was very shy to share all of this, so let's be very grateful for her bravery and be nice in the comments, or I will have to kick the out of you. Honestly though, she could probably do it herself. And with that out of the way, let's do it. So the first thing we'll want to do is open up a new Google Sheets file. This is going to be the place that we're going to do all the analyzing in. It's just a nice simple place to do that. And then from there, what we'll do with our sheet is we want to set up a few simple headings. So we're going to set up item, category, amount, and importance. Next, we'll need to get our data. So we can log on to whatever banking platform we use, and then we can get all of our transaction data from there. Now, depending on what bank you use, you might be able to just simply export the data, which is going to be the most convenient way to do it. Otherwise, you might have to do it manually. But what we're really looking for here is we want to make sure that we can get a line by line kind of transaction history of everything. We want to know what we spent the money on, the date it happened, and basically what we want to know is like exactly why did we spend that money. And if you do have to grab all of this data manually because you can't just simply export it, I know that sounds a bit tedious having to look at, you know, one item and then type it into Google Sheets, but this little bit of work, having to transfer things manually, do a bit of typing, can literally be the difference between you saving thousands of dollars or not. So honestly, I mean, suck it up. A little bit of typing's not gonna kill you. Now, when you go to do this and actually go through everything, looking at your expenses in this way can be a bit of a shocking experience. But I would very much encourage you not to shy away from everything. Make sure you're really looking at everything and taking it all in. Yeah, we might be airing some dirty laundry, there might be a few monsters under the bed or skeletons in the closet, but it's time for the light of honesty to shine forth in its wondrous splendor. Okay, so once we have our data, the next step is to format it so that it fits the 4 headings that we've created. So under item, we should have a description for each transaction that tells us clearly what it is. And under category is where we determine which group this expense is a part of. You're more than welcome to create your own categories for how you want to kind of group different expenses, but here's the ones that I generally use. Now, as we go through this, I think you'll see the logic of why I've categorized things this way, or at least I hope you will. These are the categories that usually work for me, but if they don't work for you, totally go ahead and modify them. So let's go through our sheet now and put the corresponding category next to each expense. Okay, so this is the first half of the process. Congratulations, you are halfway there. We do have one more important dimension to analyze, the importance level, but for now, let's stop here and I'll show you a really cool way to break down these categories. So in your Google Sheets file, you can click Insert and then click on pivot table. So if you've never worked with a pivot table before, this is going to be pretty cool. So this is going to open up a box where you can choose the data that you want to use and where you want the table to show up. So I'm going to select all the data here and then choose that I want the table to be in the existing sheet, and I can just click on the cell where I want it to appear in. Then a box will open up on the right side here, and if I click on add beside rows and then choose category, you can see that all the categories now show up. Then if I click on add beside value and then choose amount, you can see the total dollar amount for each category appears. Like I said, pretty cool. Now from here, I like to see which categories had the highest level of spending, right? So I'll go over here and then under category, if I click on sort by sum and then change the order to descending, it'll do that for me. And there you have it, a really nice and clean categorized breakdown of your spending from highest to lowest. So now looking at this, a few things immediately jump out to me. Shopping and health seem pretty substantial, but so does eating out. What in the world was she buying? Oh my, yep. Look at all this Uber Eats. Oh boy. I think we might have to fix this. And to do that, we'll need to bring in the big guns. We'll have to bring in Chef Tony.
Hey, it's me, Chef Tony. Welcome to my cucina. Today we will be preparing a very simple, cheap, but delicious pasta sauce.
Okay, normal Steve here is going to be narrating the recipe because COVID has taken my energy to do this whole thing in Italian, so I'll leave the accent for Chef Tony. So this recipe comes from my grandma and papa on my dad's side. My papa was Italian and my grandma would always make this sauce for us whenever we got together, and we all loved it so much. So I got her to write it down for me a long time ago when I left town, so that I could take it with me. So for ingredients, you'll need 1 can of crushed tomatoes, 1 can of tomato paste, 1 can of tomato juice, your preferred pasta noodles, 2 pounds or so of ground beef, 1 large onion, garlic, and that's pretty much it. So that's about $30 of ingredients, making over 1 dozen meals, I would say. So you're looking at about $2.50 per meal here or less. Now to start, dice the onion into relatively small pieces and then start browning them in a large pot with some olive oil. While those are cooking, dice a few garlic cloves to your taste. I like lots. Once the onions are golden brown, toss in the garlic and enjoy one of the finest smells known to man. The garlic is gonna brown pretty quickly here, so only after about a couple minutes or so, it's time to add our beef. And you'll want to break up the beef into small bits as you mix it in. Keep cooking the beef here until the liquid has evaporated down to the point where it is almost gone. And at this point, we can season the meat. Next, you'll want to crank up the heat to high and then add your crushed tomatoes. And the reason we want high heat is we want to hear a sizzling sound when we add the crushed tomatoes. This is important to getting the flavor right. And careful working with all the tomatoes. Mamma mia. After about 3 minutes with the crushed tomatoes, turn the heat back down to about medium high and then add in the tomato paste, stir it in, and then add in your tomato juice. Lastly, add about a cup of water that's going to evaporate off as you cook. Now you'll want to mix all of this and then bring it to a simmer. And then you're going to want to let this cook for about 2 to 3 hours, stirring every half hour or so. And that's it. Enjoy. Back to you, Chef Tony.
Now, while that is cooking, we have a very special message from Chef Tony. This video is sponsored by Neo. So I was walking to the Florentine Central Market to pick up some San Marzano tomatoes for the pasta sauce. And I was absolutely shocked by the price. So I had to go and buy the cheap tomatoes. Alright, I'm just gonna drop the accent now. I don't even know what it's morphed into at this point. Sorry you had to listen through all of that. But as I'm sure you guys all know, inflation is just running crazy at this point. I filled up my tank of gas the other day and it was like $100 to fill up my car, which is usually like $60 to fill up. It's absolutely insane out there. So I think now is more important than ever to make sure you're set up with a proper bank account and a good credit card. I've personally been using Neo for a while now, and I've been so happy with both their Neo card as well as their Neo money account. The Neo card is a basically zero fee cashback card, which means you pay no fees to use this thing, no monthly fees, none of that garbage, no annual fee. You get a minimum of 1% cashback, usually 2% at a lot of the gas stations I go to, and the partner average with them is actually closer to something like 5%. So you pay nothing to use this card and you just get more money back in your pocket. It's a no-brainer. On top of that, their Neo Money account is similar. Again, you don't pay any fees to use the account and you get 1.45% interest on any money that you put into it. Unlimited transactions, unlimited free e-transfers. You can't go wrong, and having a setup like this really helps take a little bit of the edge off in tough financial times. So check out the link down below for Neo. If you sign up for their money account, you'll get $10, and if you sign up for the card, you'll get $50. That's $60 for you for these awesome accounts. Thank you to Neo for sponsoring Chef Antonioni's segment of the video.
So yeah, there's definitely a huge difference between cooking at home versus takeout, and eliminating that right there already almost gets us to our target of trying to double our savings rate. But so far, we've only had half of the full conversation. We've only looked at our expenses along one dimension of these categories. We have an idea of the purpose, the reason we spent this money, but there's one more dimension that I like to apply here, and that's the dimension of importance. So I like to work with 4 tiers of importance: shouldn't have, nice to have to have, and essential. Shouldn't have is something that you spent money on that you regret. This happens to everybody, you know, don't worry too much about it, but it's good that we're dealing with it, right? Nice to have is something that you spent money on that you like, but you don't absolutely require it to get through life. Have to have is something, again, that you don't absolutely require in order to survive, but it is something that if you removed it from your life, it would have a substantial negative impact on it. This is where I think it's important to have some nuance in the fact that when we're dealing with personal finance, we don't want to totally be like fully cold and ruthless about it. This is my philosophy anyway, but I think it's very important that you enjoy your life. I mean, I'm somebody who saves a crazy amount of my income, and I've always saved a crazy amount of my income, even when I was living on a low income, but I did not negatively impact my life by doing that. For example, many people drink coffee and they love coffee, like deep down in their heart, in their bones, they love coffee. Now, you don't need coffee to survive, but many people feel like they do. If they took coffee out of their life, it would be a cold, dark place, not even worth living anymore. So in this case, I would categorize coffee as a have to have. But now, essential. This final tier is for the things that are truly essential. A roof over your head, food in your belly, things you would actually physically not survive without. Okay, and with that understood, let's input our importance tiers next to each expense. Cool, so that's all done. Now let's once again create our handy pivot table in the same way we did the last one, but this time we're going to do it for importance. Okay, this is great. Like, this is a lot of really helpful information to work with. So now we have the 2 dimensions to look at things. And this is really helpful because now we can see essential expenses are the highest, and that makes sense. That's good. If they're not the highest, then it's probably something you definitely want to look at then. But the second highest category here isn't have to have, it's nice to have. Remember, these are things that we said are not super important. And if we look in this case, there's over $1,000 here of potential savings to work with. Now I'll show you another really cool trick. So if you double click on this row in the pivot table, or any row that you want to look at in more detail, it actually opens up another sheet for us to see all the data of what makes up that particular part of the pivot table. And then if we again apply a filter here and then organize this from highest to lowest, we can see what things contained within here would be the most impactful to cut out. And if you want to go crazy, you can make even another pivot table to see what the main categories in here are. And now looking at all this really helpful information, I think the first easy step that would be very reasonable to do, I think anyway, is have spending on eating out and on shopping be cut in half. So that gives us about $375 of savings. So we're a little bit shy of our $420 savings target, but That's a really great start. And then from there, to tip us over our target, we have our shouldn't have category. So this is, of course, the easiest to eliminate. This is like the low-hanging fruit. And if we just completely eliminate that, which again, I think is reasonable to do because you regret spending that money anyways, that right there gives us an additional $263 of money that could have been saved in this month. So in just these 2 steps, like this is just the beginning, we've identified areas where money could not have been spent, and it would have saved us $638 this month, bringing that month's savings rate to a total of about 25%. And we're just getting started here, okay? Those were like the first 2 things I looked at and we're like, yeah, you could totally cut this. Honestly, this part going through things is not complicated. It's not really hard. The work is in committing to actually analyze the expenses, to look at them, to categorize them, to slice everything up. That's the real work. That's really where the magic happens. That gives you all the dots to work with, and then connecting them, that's easy. So if you want to try and increase your savings rate, I would challenge you to give this process a shot. See if it makes any impact in your life. And I think you'll be surprised to note that not only will you maybe save more money, but at least in my case, I actually became a more happy and satisfied person because I was able to cut out the things that didn't actually bring me any sustainable, meaningful, long-term happiness and just focus on the things that did. And with all that said, I think that's where I'm going to wrap this video. Now, I really want to get another episode out in my WTF is going on right now series. If you haven't checked the first episode out on how to basically prepare and manage your finances for a recession, definitely check that one out. And in my next episode in the series, I'm going to dive into like what a recession actually is. Like what does that even mean? Are we going to have one? Is it really that bad of a thing? Like all those questions you might have. And that's it. So, Chef Tony sends his regards. Arrivederci.